I actually have 2 CDs up there on the unlimited ones. If you have Apple Unlimited, if you have Spotify Unlimited, whatever, I wrote a bunch of songs, did 2 full album CDs. So if you look, I'll give you the names of them. It's Bill Andrews. One is called Warriors in the Woods. The other one is called Life's Roads. And so if you've got those unlimited services, I was thinking because I had the mic on, you know. Yeah. It's going to stop breaking into song here.
We'll have a look.
Okay, we're rolling?
Yep.
Okay, all right. So obviously we win a lot of awards, and some of the reasons why is this. Remember, this is all we do. So if we don't do this well, we're in trouble. We have to have our product be featured correctly and really listen to the customers. We have to make sure that we're highly competitive against our competitors, and they're all big guys you're going to see in a minute. We hardly ever compete with anybody that's less than $4 billion in revenue. We have to support the heck out of our customers more than anybody else. Again, if we don't do this right, because we only have one thing, right, we're in trouble. So we obsess about the features. We obsess about differentiation. We obsess about the support. We obsess about the quality of the product. We have to, right, to survive, right? Because we're not Dell. We're not Hewlett Packard.
You can't hide, right?
We can't hide. There's no place for us to hide. We have a lot of customers, you know, so we'll go back to that later. So on the customer profile, who's the target customer that we go after, that Extra goes after? First of all, our primary target is still data centers, right? But more in the upper mid-market, through the small enterprise, into the enterprise, into the large enterprise. We don't chase the SMB, okay? We don't want the 10, 20, 30 terabyte customers. We don't go there, right? For us, a small customer's got 50 terabyte of data to be backed up. But I'll give you a couple stats. 75% of our new customer bookings every quarter comes from 6- and 7-figure purchase orders. So 100K or over and $1 million and over. The average ASP is $280,000, right? So we're not selling $5,000 and $10,000 stuff here. 75% of our new customer bookings every quarter are from deals over 100K and over $1 million. We'll do this quarter like 5 over $1 million deals, okay? The second market, so first of all, as I said, 50 terabyte to petabytes is where we go. So we're not chasing the SMB, nor do we care to. We tend to go after people that are keeping at least 4 copies of retention, 4 weeklies, 2 weeklies, 2 monthlies. So that's not a lot of retention, but we got to have some level of retention. And all of our customers, actually, when you get to the size customers we have a second data center to replicate to. So even though we have the ability to replicate to AWS and Azure for disaster recovery, we have a VM that runs in AWS, we have a VM that runs in Azure, less than 1% of our customers do that. Our customers have second data centers. They replicate their disaster recovery to a second data center. And why? They need to come up in 24, 48 hours after disaster. They can't wait 30 days for that data to download from the cloud. So our customers are bigger customers. Their disaster recovery, 99% of the time, is at a second data center that they own, okay? The next thing is obviously MSPs, managed service providers, right? And I'll talk about global systems integrators separately. So we have a growing MSP business now, where we're getting into more and more larger MSPs. These are customers that somewhere we're doing between 300,000 with them so far, up to 3 million each with them so far. They're bigger ones, not the smaller ones. We chase the world's largest, 1,000 largest MSPs. We don't chase the 10,000 small MSPs, right? All the little resellers. Veeam has a huge base of, little MSPs, right? They got like 10,000. Those aren't the ones we chase. We're chasing the 1,000 largest MSPs in the world. So that's where we go. On the global systems integrators, there's roughly 14 very large global systems integrators. So you'll know a lot of the names when I mention it. HCL, Tata, which is TCS, Tech Mahindra, Wipro, Infosys, Cognizant, Capgemini, AT&T, NTT, Accenture, Atos, LTIMindtree, DXC, and Kyndryl. Ooh, that's pretty good, huh? I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to pull it off. And so players, they have lots of different tentacles into large corporations because they often run the IT departments. If they're not running the IT departments, they're owning and running the equipment in the customer's IT departments. I'll give you examples. You know, we have L'Oreal Cosmetics, France, right? So I'll start picking out countries here. And Kyndryl, working with Kyndryl, they did an outsourced IT data center for L'Oreal Cosmetics, right? So, and we're doing that with them. In Spain, so we'll pick out Spain here. In Spain, we're with one of the GSIs. They've won the contract to consult for the hospital system inside of France. Excuse me, inside of Spain, I said France, Spain. We now have 22 hospitals in Spain and growing, right? Because of this relationship with the GSI, right? So the global systems integrators are a big part of who we're working with and starting to work with. We have strong relationships with 2 of those 14 I just mentioned. We are in testing right now with a 3rd. And then we're starting to create a relationship right now with a 4th. These are big entities. They're hard to move, right? They're $18 billion, $20 billion, $30 billion a year. And those are the players that can walk us into a lot of big companies. And they are. If I told you some of the names of accounts, they've recently walked us in. They're household names across EMEA, as an example. The other thing for us, so these guys offer backup as a service. So let me define backup as a service, BAS. BAS is if I'm an MSP or I'm a global systems integrator, if I'm going to offer you a BAS service, I'm going to put a backup application on your premise. I'm going to put storage on your premise. I'm going to manage that remotely. So if that's the customer there, I'm all the way over here. There's where the backup app and the backup storage is. I am going to manage that remotely. It's in your environment. So I'm managing that. And then I have that replicate back to my facility for your disaster recovery. That's what 90% of BAS services are. You say, why is the backup application and the backup storage on premise? That's where the primary storage is. One thing you can know for sure is that wherever the primary storage is, that's where the backup storage is. Nobody has enough bandwidth to do backup across a wide area network. So when people say, oh, can you back up to the cloud? No, you can't. No, you have only 24 hours to finish your backups. And in fact, you only have 6 or 7 hours. Because if they're not done in 6 and 7 hours, those agents are choking your application servers and they're choking your network, which is hurting your user, your employee productivity. So if the primary storage is here in the data center, the backup storage has to be here in the data center. And 99% of the time, the backup application's in the data center. If your data lives in the public cloud, guess where the backup storage has to be? With it in the public cloud. Nobody has the bandwidth because if you don't get the backups done, tomorrow the next one starts. And if this one isn't done, now they just back up and you never get out of it. So you will find that when customers have on-premise data and their primary storage on-prem, that's where the backup and backup storage go. That customer can either run that backup app and backup storage themselves, or they can turn to an MSP or a GSI and say, you run that for me. Okay? So that's your BAS service. Your DRaaS service, DR as a service, is the customer owns and runs their own backup app and backup storage, and they need a place to replicate it to. They don't have a second data center. So if they don't have a second data center, they only have a couple choices. They can, A, go rent a data center somewhere to put target DR storage, colo space, right, colocation space. That's number one. Number two, they can replicate to a cloud, but they usually don't because they can't get it back in time to do a DR recovery. Or they go to some local service that has a reasonable bandwidth to that local service for them, right? So that's the big things you see. And then you can have an IT outsourced data center. The IT outsourced data center is where I turn and I say, I no longer want to run that data center in Texas. And somebody else says, shut it down, I'll run it for you. And all of these big GSIs and all these biggest MSPs have data centers. They set up a cage with your name on it, Mobile Oil, right? They set up application servers, they set up networking, they set up primary storage, they set up backup, etc. in that cage, and they run a data center for you in their data center, right? And if you go down, there's a cage, you know, and they don't have your name on the cage, by the way, it's some code, right? Because they don't want people walking through there knowing that's Mobile Oil's network, right? So they'll have some kind of code, but they know the They got the little, like when you were a kid, the little deciphering to know what cage is what. So if you look at these large MSPs and these large GSIs, they may very well do a number of things. They may act as a consulting firm to customers to help them figure out what to buy, like the one we're working with in Spain. They may very well just say to the customer, we're going to come in and run the stuff. We're the bodies. You don't want to run it yourself, right? And we'll run it for you for a fee. They may say, we're going to run, in the case of backup, your backup. We're going to run the backup storage and the backup app on your premise remotely from our NOC, our Network Operations Center, and we're going to then replicate that back to our facility for DR. Or if you're running that stuff, we can just be the DR. They pretty much can do anything you want. And so what do I see happening? I've been around the IT data center for a long time. And what do I see happening? I see customers, when people say, everybody's going to the cloud, I just laugh my rear end off. No such thing. People, that's just such a bad perception. What are customers really doing? And remember, we talk to them all day long every day, as do I. They are choosing, just like you do in your household, what's right for what thing. So, for example, in my house, I'm in the United States, I use for my internet a company called Xfinity, okay? But for my electric, I use an electric company. For my water, I use the town water. For my music, I use Apple Music and I use, I just said it a minute ago. Spotify, thank you, because I was jumping in my head. In my car, though, I get in my car, I use Sirius. Right? I get from the company the thing I need. So what are companies really doing out there? They're turning and they're saying, there are some applications I just don't want to run. I don't want to be able to keep up the expertise. So I am going to go do all my customer resource management, CRM, using Salesforce. That's a SaaS play, software as a service, and I'll just rent it and use it, and that's the SaaS play. I am going to run some of my data centers myself. I'm a brokerage firm in New York. No way is Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, Morgan Stanley letting somebody else run their data center. I'll be dead when that happens, okay? And I don't plan to die anytime soon. So I'm going to run my own major data centers, but I might decide smaller data centers, I want to outsource those to a GSR MSP to set up and run for me, right? I don't want to have to deal with the smaller data centers. I am going to put some data in the public clouds. What kind of data? Well, DevOps. Because DevOps requires me every so often to compile code, and I get a spike in CPU like this. So what do? I put that data in a public cloud, right? And when I need burstable compute, it's there. I don't pay for the compute until I use it. And I can't sit around my data center keeping this much compute around when I'm only going to use it every 6 months. So I'll put my DevOps, let's say, in the public cloud. There's applications I'm going to run myself. There's storage I'm going to run myself. So when you go out there, this idea that the data center went away, the data center went nowhere. Most every customer we deal with, and I'm going to give you an interesting statistic, still running their own data centers. Now, do they have data in the cloud? Yes. Do they have data at SaaS providers? Yes. Right? But they choose what's right for their business using all these things at their disposal, right? You'll say, but the cloud data is growing like this, but as is the data center data. Well, how can that be? Because data is growing like crazy. It's floating all the boats, right? We're creating data at a rate that's just mind-boggling, right? So when we walk into corporate customers, we got Lockheed Martin as an example, right? Big defense contract. They got us in 7 of the major data centers. When you walk into a Lockheed Martin, they're doing everything. They got some data in the cloud. They got a lot of data in their data centers. They're doing some things with SaaS providers where they're outsourcing it, like a NetSuite or a Concur or something like that, right? So as a result, there is no one size fits all for these customers. They are choosing and picking. This is good for that. This is good for that. Spotify is good for my music streaming. Sirius is good for my driving around in my car. By the way, I'm not going to get from Sirius satellite my electric in my house. I got to go to the electric company, and I got to get my, how many different companies do we all deal with to get the services in our house? Between water and electric and internet and television and all the things, and music and all the things we do. It's no different for corporations, right? So it's a real intermix when you go into these hallways. And you got to kind of say, what do you do and where, right? And what do we care about? We care about the data that's on premise, sitting on storage that needs to be backed up. Now, why do people back up? And I did this last year, but I just want to be clear. It's layers. I've been around backup a long time. The first, what's the job of backup? It is to keep users productive. That's it. That's it. Why? Users are my number one cost on almost any company in the world, right? People, employees, that's my cost. Huge cost. I need to make them as productive as I can. What is AI really all about coming up? Making people way more productive, so I don't need as many.
Yeah,
right?
Or trigger some layoffs.
Yeah, it might. It might very well, right? So, and I'll give you examples. So in engineering here, we have using AI, we have our own servers. The server we have right now, if you were to go buy it today, is $1 million just for a single server. Mind that. It sounds like a mini computer to me. But it learned all of our code. It knows all of our routines. Every one of our engineers, 95 engineers, have an AI-powered laptop. And it helps them to be far more productive. It actually, right now, and it's still growing, because it's still learning, we're still training, it's already increased our productivity by 50%, which means 100 engineers can produce what 150 somewhere else that don't have AI produces. And the goal is to get to 2x, to have it produce twice as much. So we'll bring out features faster, we'll bring out features sooner, right? Because of AI assisting everything. I'll give you an example. This is in Mary's area. We use a third-party company for our translations. Remember, we've got to translate into dozens and dozens of countries around the world, and it's not an easy task. So in the olden days, 7, 8 years ago, the olden days, we'd have to sit there and have humans translate our collateral, our presentations. Then somebody had to, who spoke the language, check it, because they never got the technology right, because the translators don't understand backup and storage and technology words. And it was a mess. Today, using AI, when we started on this journey 2 years ago, they would upload all of our information, learn, right? AI learns all of your words, all your stuff. And in the beginning, it would be about 30% correct when it would translate. And we would then have to have our field systems engineers, right? Our pre-sales systems engineers around the world, 63 of them we got now actually, 63 of them, sit there and translate. So the SEs in France, the SEs in India, the SEs in Hong Kong would have to make sure everything was correct. Fast forward 2 years. There are pieces we now run through there and nobody, when they look at them, has to change anything. And 95% of the time now, they're right. It's got to a point where now they're only changing a word here, a word there, a concept here, and it's still growing. There'll be a point where it learns our words, it learns our technology, it learns what we're doing, where human hands don't have to look at or touch a translation. We're coming very close to it. It went from 30% to 95% in what, 2 years? In 2 years. That is powerful. That's the power of AI, right? That's powerful. So going back to backup, everything in IT is about keeping users productive. That's the job of IT. How do I make my users more productive so that I don't need as many? Because it's a huge cost to business. So in backup, what do I have to do? First of all, when I'm doing backups, what is backup? Backup is every time somebody types and makes changes, you want to make copies of that so you have another copy. What if the primary storage goes down? What if the controller card in the primary storage goes bad and corrupts the data? What if you have some kind of other corruption event? What if you have a ransomware event where they encrypt all the data? What if? There's all kinds of ways you can have the data be lost, right? And so at this point, this computer right now, the drive could fry, heat up, fry, and that data's gone. If there's not a copy somewhere else, I've just lost everything I've worked on for like 20 years. So, right, you gotta have backup. When you do backups, why do you do them first? And then secondly, what's all the things you need to think about? What's the why first? The why is if a user deletes a file, None of us have ever done that. Overwrite a file by mistake, a save as, and we save it over the wrong one. None of us have ever done that. If, in fact, any of that kind of stuff, or the file, I try to open it, and I can't because it's corrupted, then you need to go to IT and say, give me that file, because this is a PowerPoint presentation I use once a quarter, and it's got 70 slides, and if I were to go recreate that, it's going to take me like 2 weeks. So you just restore it to whatever the last copy was, which was last night. So the worst amount of work you lose typically is, let's say it happened at 3:30, I lost today's work, but at least I got a copy from last night. So the first thing is to keep users productive by being able to restore deleted files, overwritten files, or corrupted files. That's the first thing. The second thing is to make sure we can keep business continuity going, right? Meaning, what happens if there's an earthquake, a tsunami, a hurricane, or tornado, a fire, whatever, man-made or natural-made? I need to be able to keep the business running. So I lose a data center to a flood, or I lose a data center to a fire, I still need to be able to keep operations going. So I need another copy of all my data somewhere else. That's your disaster recovery. Also business continuity against cyber attacks. How does a cyber attack mostly occur, right? It's the threat actor sends out a phishing attempt to all your employees. And in that phishing attempt, there's a link or a document, and they want you to click on it. And beneath that document isn't what you think, or beneath that link is not what you think. It's nothing more than they need you to click on that, because beneath it is the launch of the code, right? You're really launching code. They disguise it as a PDF, or they disguise it as a link. And they say to you, oh, click on this, you got to update your file, you got to do this, and you click on it, it launches code in your network. It watches password usage. This is how most of ransomware attacks. That code now watches password usage, and it sees the IT people logging into the scanners, logging into the switches, logging into the routers, logging in Exegrid, right? And now it knows the passwords. At night, they shut off the scanners because they have the passwords. And then they have free run. The scanners are off, no alerts. They can copy data, they can encrypt data, they can do whatever they want. They encrypt, well, first of all, now they copy the data, right? They copy your data first. Then they encrypt it, and then they send you a ransom note saying, you can't get any primary data, none of your users can work. And then you say, ha, 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 I got an Exegrid I can recover. And sometimes they say, ha, 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 then don't pay me the ransomware for the encryption key because you don't need it. But by the way, here's a link to all of your data. I just want to show you I have it, and we're going to release it to the world if you don't pay me. That's the second layer now that they're doing with ransomware attacks. So you want to make sure you guard against this stuff. You want to make sure that the users don't not be able to work when there's a ransomware attack, and that you can recover, etc. So all you're trying to do with backup is to make sure if you delete stuff, if you corrupt stuff, if stuff is encrypted, if the data center itself goes down, in an earthquake, you can keep your business or your employees operational, right? Because without data, we're done. Imagine you spend time writing a great article. It took you 3 hours, and then by mistake you deleted it or overwrote it or it got corrupted. I don't know how many times you'd say the F word, but it would be pouring out of my mouth at high speed. F, 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 because you're so upset that you just lost 3 hours worth of work, right? So what else you have to think about in backup? You need to think about that when the backups run, the agents are grabbing and scanning and looking for any data that changed since yesterday, so it can run it across the network to the backup storage. That's what Veeam, Cohesity, Rubrik, Commvault, NetBackup, all these products do. Well, if they're doing that at 10 in the morning, 12 in the afternoon, 2 in the afternoon, guess what? That's impacting the amount of CPU and memory that is available for the users to work, so everything's slow. And it fills the network with traffic traversing from all of the servers to the backup storage, so everybody's slow. So you can't have backups run during the day. You've got to get them done before everybody shows up to work in the morning, right? You've got to get them done. That's what's called the backup window, right? They'll say, I need a 6-hour backup window. I start my backups at midnight. I need them to be done at 6 a.m. or whatever their backup window is. So first of all, they need fast backups, or that impedes user productivity, right? Yet another problem. You need fast restores. What if I go down and I need and a VM is corrupted, and I need to restore that VM? Well, that VM can take me 2 minutes, so that VM could take me 2 hours. If it takes me 2 hours, think about what a VM is. It's a virtual machine. It's the software that was on that machine and all of the data, right? And if I'm going to recover that, nobody can work until I'm done recovering that. And if that takes 2 hours, that's 2 hours of people sitting around twiddling their thumbs. So you have to care about restore performance. And we'll talk about other stuff later, but this is all the stuff that needs to be thought about in backup, which hurts user productivity. And we're going to talk through when we show up, why is the customer so frustrated? We support over 25 backup applications. We're going to show you that later. Veeam, Commvault, NetBackup, Rubrik, and in 3 weeks, Cohesity. And I let the cat out of the bag because I know I can't stop you guys, so I'm not even going to try. All right, and then, right, etc. Haiku, Acronis, Oracle Admin, SQL dumps, right, all kinds. We do not focus on the SMB, right? So that's not where we live, as we've said that before.
What can you say? We met recently a Polish company named Storeware.
So I'll tell you what we see in order. Because remember, we're up market. 97, 98% of the time, when we walk into corporate accounts, we see a huge base still of NetBackup left over from the Veritas days. If the customer's looking at anything new, they're all looking to switch from what they have. 99.9% of the time, they're looking at Veeam, Cohesity, Rubrik, and Commvault. It's a rare day we hear another word. Now, we support 25, so I'm not pushing one or the other. I could care less what they buy, to be honest. We support them all. But that's what we see.
Did you see or did you hear about a company we met yesterday, a Chinese company named Vinchin?
Never heard of them. Storeware I've heard of, but I've never seen them at a customer.
Take a look to this.
Yeah. So just so you know, I think the likelihood that anybody now can break in against Veeam, Commvault, Rubrik, Cohesity is close to zero as you can get. Anybody starting a backup application today that's not an SMB, that's up market, I don't think they have a shot. It's that shut down. The amount of features and functionality you have to be able to back up VMs, containers, objects, database data, unstructured data, etc., is insane, right? These are complicated software products, and there's only 4 now that anybody looks at.
Carbonite was a company located close to here, right?
Yeah, so Carbonite was a consumer. They started doing consumer. So David Friend, I've known for a long time. He now runs Wasabi. He founded Wasabi. Same guy, right? So the guy who founded Carbonite founded Wasabi.
David Friend.
Yeah, David Friend. That's right. So David, with Carbonite, that was a consumer-based product first. So they were just backing up home users, like for me on my home computer, you on your home computer. And then they moved it a little bit up into the SMB, and then they sold the company. I just haven't heard the name since they sold it. But he was mostly going after very small businesses and consumers.
I think OpenText on it.
Yeah. So I'm telling you, when we go in the market we're in, guys, all we hear all day long is Veeam, Rubrik, Cohesity, and Commvault. All day long. Well, let me throw something at you, and then that's just a question. Let me do it by revenue, because to me, revenue tells the whole story. Veeam is a $2 billion company. Commvault is a $1.3 billion company. Rubrik is a $1.4 billion company. And Cohesity, with the acquisition of NetBackup, is a $1.5 billion company. I want you to name me another backup company first that is over $1 billion. No, but if we were, you'd see my tires peeling out of the parking lot with smoke coming out.
What is IBM revenue for?
Spectrum Protect, down around $250 million. I was just going to drop it down. I was going to say, name me one over 900 million. Name me one over 800 million. Name me one over 700 million. Name me one over 600 million. Name me one over 500 million. You get the point. 4 guys dominate right now. Dominate.
So, I share your point of view, but a few years ago, suddenly, for probably good market reason, a few new players arrived. 10 years ago, Rubrik, Cohesity, etc.,
Right.
IQ emerged. And what you said from Commvault, Veritas, Legato, all of these,
Yeah.
in the past, even Veeam, but it was a
Right.
different size, people say, oh, no more new.
No, 20 to 30 years, there'll be new ones again.
Generation arrived.
Right, so let me tell you that so I study this for a living, by the way. I can go all the way back and tell you the history of Isilon and Data Domain and Legato and Avamar and you name it. What happens is when somebody gets into a new market is there's a shift, right? There's some kind of paradigm shift of sorts. Backup had 5 backup apps for 30 years, actually 4 plus later Avamar. For 30 years. Commvault was coded in the 1980s, as was NetBackup, as was Networker, which was Legato, as was IBM Spectrum Tech, which is TSM.
Tivoli, yeah.
And then in 1999, Avamar.
Omniback, HP
Yeah.
Omniback.
Yeah. So those products were coded way back then. They hung around for like 30 years, 40 years, before there was shift. Okay, it's not going to happen again in the next 10 years, and I'll tell you why. So I'm going to go a step further. What happened is, in the case of Veeam, there was a shift in the market, and that was VMware did this.
Yeah, this is a.
It was around forever, stuck at 100 million in revenue forever, and then all of a sudden everybody realized it's time to virtualize, and boom, it rocketed to the moon, right? And nobody could back up VMs. Nobody. There was 2 companies on the planet, Veeam and one other. The Commvaults and the NetBackups, all those guys hadn't done it yet. Even Backup Exec hadn't done it yet. So Veeam they were taking orders like candy from a baby, right? So they were just stealing it away. So that's how they got going. Commvault was one of the old school players of the big guys. And as far as I'm concerned, they were heading for death until Sanjay got there. Sanjay has done an amazing job.
Because they rewrite the product into Sympana.
Well, I think they also did Metallic, and they also made the UI easier. But Sanjay has done a phenomenal job in reinventing Commvault. I bow down to his ability. He's a better CEO than I am. He did a fantastic job. I would then say that customers at one point raise their head and they say, I'm done with Networker, Avamar, TSM, NetBackup, Commvault. I'm done. Why was I done? They were saying these products were too complicated. They're very heavy. They got bolted and bolted and bolted and bolted on for decades. They were so complicated. You had to use CLIs to run them, right? Command line interface. Secondly, they were very expensive. And thirdly, they weren't keeping up. Their architectures were so old, they couldn't keep up with the new workloads and the new way of thinking about not only backup, but also security. So customers were lifting their heads like crazy. I was here, I was watching it happen. And they were saying, we want something else. And they were going to their resellers and their GSIs saying, find me something else. And what was available? Veeam was SMB. At that time, Veeam did not have any enterprise features. They do today, they didn't then. There was only 2 players on the planet that emerged, Rubrik and Cohesity. And so all of a sudden, everybody was asking for an alternative, and those 2 guys rocketed. Rubrik went from $0 to $1 billion in 10 years. That doesn't happen because you don't have a hot market, right? That doesn't happen because you're great at hiring salespeople. So they filled a void that came. But now what's happened? That transition's happened, and Veeam, Rubrik, Cohesity, and the new Commvault are reinvented, and there's no hole right now for somebody to run through. And it won't be until those products get old and tired, and that's a ways away, right? It's 10, 20 years away. So there's no holes right now. There has to be a hole in the market, and there's no hole right now in backup apps. They're filling those holes, right, because they've got huge development teams. And so, like I said, we never hear a customer say, and I won't mention names, I tried to work with 3 or 4 small backup app companies. I couldn't get a single customer to look at them, right? We tried. We worked with a few. I won't mention the names. You probably know them all. Those are the 4 that anybody cares about.
What's the state of Acronis now? As you know, they spent
So Kronos is down market.
a load of money on marketing.
Yeah.
What's your-
So Kronos is in the SMB world more than anything. They're not up market. And they're mostly security versus backup from their revenue. Their revenue is 450-ish, maybe give or take, 450 million revenue. They're out of where, like Switzerland or somewhere?
Switzerland and Singapore, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So they're down market, right? They're down market. I would say these are the backup companies that are doing well. The big four for sure. I just mentioned four guys whose revenue is over $6 billion combined, right? Veeam, Commvault, Cohesive, and Rubrik, together, they're over $6 billion.
What about Druva?
So I was going to say, the ones that are doing okay outside of that would be Druva, Haiku, and Acronis.
Bakula, did you see Bakula?
I know Bacula, very small, not a lot of revenue, not a lot of customers. I'm very familiar with Bacula.
So because you're plugged in, I'm just, this is
Yeah.
your, for you, but with your expertise, after we met with Vincent, one of the things that just popped into my head as they were talking, because they're talking about how they want to try to expand in the market, and outside looking in, thinking, I don't think that a lot of people, once you pick like Veeam or Rubrik or Cohesity, do you know how often does someone switch?
Not often. Here's why. It's a huge amount of work to switch your backup app.
That's what I thought.
You've got agents on gazillions of servers. All your data is in that backup app's format. If you switch, you have to still keep the storage around. Let's say you're keeping 36 monthlies. You've got to keep that storage around for 36 months in case you got to ever go restore that stuff because the new backup app can't read that data. Everybody's got their own proprietary format. There is no standard format that one backup company is in. It can read everything else that's there. No, you've got to keep the backup app around and that backup storage around until it fully ages out of your retention period. It's one of the most sticky applications in the world. So, any rate, further we go. So, our competition, who do we replace all day long? When we go in, our customers, who did we replace? When it's an existing backup app in there already and we show up, this is who we replace most of the time. We replace primary storage that's sitting behind the backup application, right? From Dell, who's the #1 storage provider in the world, HP, who's the #2, NetApp, who's the #3, and et cetera. Or we replace inline scale-up deduplication appliances, okay? Dell Data Main, HPE still wants net backup appliances. We don't replace SSD. A, there's not a lot of it out there in backup yet. And B, if they did have it, it's still fairly new. I'll explain we compete with it in a minute. This is what we replace all day long. This is 90% of our sales right here. Okay? So, we're going to talk in a minute why we replace primary storage and why we replace deduplication appliances. When we compete, right, that's different. Because when we compete, it's the same vendors above. We're competing against Dell, HP, NetApp, Hitachi. So it would be Dell PowerStore, HPE, Alletra, NetApp, E-Series, Hitachi, Ventara, etc. And also, we're going to see SSD from Everpure, of course, right? The #1 SSD player. And we see Huawei Ocean Protect in some countries. Depends on the country. Some countries won't touch a Chinese product with a 50-foot pole, like the US. Don't see Huawei at all. It's dead in the US, as an example. It's dead in certain LATAM countries, but not in other LATAM countries. It's dead in certain European countries, but not in other European countries. It's actually dead in some APAC countries and not others. Some countries have garlic and salt up, like when there's a vampire in the room against Huawei, and some do not. I've been told the reason why is, I'm not an expert in this, so I'll couch this with this, is because they're afraid of what might be on the storage. Could there be code on there that's reading the data? That's pretty much what people tell me. I don't know if that's true or not, but that seems to be the going story, is they're afraid there could be code on there that reads the storage. So some countries, they have no problem buying Huawei, and other countries, they do.
So let me give you a feedback from a few French or European customers. It's difficult for them to select or choose Huawei, but when they have the opportunity to test a Huawei box, they love it. And they wish to keep it.
Yeah.
And most of them, French hospital, different things, they plan to continue with this because they say for the price,
Yeah.
the resiliency of the box, the performance, etc. This is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say the performance. We'll get to that in a minute. But yes, for the resiliency and the price. That's slow as a dog because it's inline deduplication.
So second argument is more about China versus or rather than Huawei.
Yes, I agree.
The fact that, okay, it's a China enterprise, and we don't want them to, let's say, acquire market share and finally they'll never disappear.
Right.
Because when Huawei enter, it's difficult to kick them off.
Right.
So one of the reasons is this. When Huawei joined, competition suffered.
So Huawei is not that big in backup. I have their revenue numbers for backup. We compete with them. I put them on here. If you were to say who do we compete with the most, it's Dell. Second most, it's HP. Third most, it jumps around depending on the country and the region. It could be NetApp in one country attached to another, Huawei in another, and Everpure in another. But the first two, like clockwork, Dell and HP.
It's very expensive to deploy Everpure FlashBlade for a backup target.
It was getting closer as they kept driving the price down, and then with the just recent component, it pushed them back out of backup. It was really coming down fast, and I thought we were going to see a lot more SSD in backup. SSD has gone up 3x. Prices have gone through the moon. Through the moon. All right, so, right. We see object first in some Veeam deals, right, as well. This is,
Has that changed since they bought it?
it's gotten less.
Less?
Less. It's the weirdest thing. I know why, and I don't want to get into it because it's too. I'd be talking too deeply. Then there's a camera running.
Scality, Artesca.
Never see him. Never see him. I'm telling you, this is who we see. You know me. I put it up there. I mean, I didn't have to put object first up there. I did.
Claudian, never? Claudian, never?
Oh no. We hear Scality once in a while in Australia. That's it. And Cloudian nowhere. Yep. So this is who we see 90% of the time. Okay? And by the way, how do we know? Because this is all we do, so we know who we see. Right? And it makes sense. So let me explain why it makes sense. We're going to see Dell the most, and why? Dell does 50% of all storage. They're the king of storage.
And they're a superb channel.
They have $18 billion a year in storage. We're going to see them the most. Why? Because they are the biggest storage provider. Because they bought EMC, which was doing $30 billion. HP, we're going to see the second most, right? And why Dell and HP? Dell is number one in servers, and HPE is number two in servers.
Yeah, but look at the storage revenue of HP. It's just 1.1 last quarter. It's pretty flat.
Yeah, so HPE storage is doing $40 billion a year, and Dell is doing $160 billion a year right now. Go listen to the last two earnings calls. $40 billion a year for HP, $160 billion a year for Dell. All in. All in. So, and I go, by the way, every quarter I listen to the earnings calls end to end for HP, Dell, NetApp, Everpure, Quantum, Commvault, Rubrik, you name it. Anything storage and backup, I listen to the entire thing live and take notes because you learn a lot about what's going on within these companies. They'll drop how much they're really doing in subscription and pay by the terabyte, and I know now I can figure out what percentage of the revenue is that, which is less than 10%, right? Sounds bigger than it is, but it's only 10% of the revenue. So why do we see Dell and HP? They dominate servers. They dominate storage. You know, you look after for servers, you're going to go to Dell or HP, maybe IBM, maybe Supermicro, maybe Lenovo. Lenovo is less than 5% market share in servers. Oh yeah, they're under 5% market share. Look it up, do the research. They're under 5% market share. So the dominant players are Dell and HP. They just dominate the hallways of servers and storage.
But it was not the case in the past because when EMC was an independent company, they provide storage only, not server.
Yeah, yeah,
So it was an external player who dominated the market.
yeah,
Now, because there is some storage, let's say captive storage, when
Yeah.
you sell server, you sell the storage.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, Dell did a good move in buying EMC, right? Okay, so success statistics, right? If Exeter presents to the customer, so let's say we get brought in by a reseller into an opportunity and we present to the customer, right? And they have a backup storage project. We'll get into the sales cycle over 95% of the time. It's a rare day if we get into this project and we present that we're not in the sales cycle. You say, why is that? They only have three things to look at. Primary storage from Dell, HP, NetApp, whatever. Deduplication appliances from Dell, HP, Huawei, whatever, and us. And we're the only thing that's different. So we get quickly into the sales cycle because we have a very different story than everybody else. And then we'll win consistently over 70% of the time. In fact, our win rate is over 70% for the last 32 quarters, average. Sometimes it's 60, sometimes it's 80. I'm saying the average. And the last 4 quarters, we've averaged 74% win rate. So we have an extremely high win rate, and you're going to see why in a moment. If a customer POC tests, we win 83% of the time when they test. We want them to test. We push, we talk about it, we yell about it, we email about it, test us, test us, test us. Because, and I'll be polite here, some companies overmarket their products. And when you put them in a lab side by side, they don't do near what their data sheet says they do. Or what they tend to do is to give the best case of what they do, right? Like a workload that makes it scream, and then you do put the rest of the workloads on it and it drags it down to its knees, right? So we love to test. Retention. Our customer retention rate is 95.6%, meaning customers who start the year with us, at the end of the year, we lose about 4.4% of our customers a year. If you say, where do they go? I got to do this right. 3.4% of them stuff we can't control. They get acquired. They go out of business. They decide to not run backup anymore and have a BAS provider run it for them because they just don't want to manage backup anymore. Whatever. 1% of it is stuff where we drop the ball, right? Our sales reps drop the ball. It's very rare one of our competitors replaces us. Extremely rare that a Dell or an HP that replaces us and that's why we're out. We think perfection's 96%, maybe 96.2, meaning if we got everything we possibly could, not the ones we can't control, then we think it's close to 96%. By the way, in storage, this is an extremely high number. I will tell you a better statistic. Two stories I'm going to tell you. The first statistic is this. In our top 2,200 customers, which we leave with our field sales force, because those are our larger accounts, we take the rest, about just under 3,000 now customers, into telesales. All of the top 2,200 customers, we lose 2% a year to something else. By the way, that means it would take us 50 years to turn our top 2,200 customers over.
Yeah, but normally when people acquire this product, they say, okay, I acquired this product for 3 years, 5 years. What was the trigger that they finally say, oh, I prefer something else, I need to test?
In our largest accounts, it is usually a number of things. One, again, it could be an acquisition. Usually they don't go out of business in those larger companies, but it could be an acquisition. Sometimes it's Dell comes in and does a $100 million refresh of all their data centers, and everything just gets wrapped up into it. And we're just politically a peanut. We get kind of washed out with the tide, right? Those things happen to us. Skip this. Reason for attrition, they get acquired, they go out of business, they go to a service to run their MSPs. They may move their primary data to the cloud, but that's usually the smaller customers. So let me explain. Of our top 500 customers, this is a trivia question, of our top 500 customers, in the last 10 years, our top 500 customers, how many left us because they moved their data to a public cloud?
0.
3. People aren't moving data to the public cloud. I know people say it. I just don't see it. And in fact, right now, we're seeing a lot of repatriation. I interview every sales rep we hire because I learn from them what they're seeing. And I always ask, are you seeing data go that way or repatriation? They all say, oh, my customers are repatriating because of the cost.
So is it correct to say that on-prem app are backup on-prem, cloud app, SaaS app are backup in the cloud, but there is no transfer in between.
Yeah, so if it's more than just SaaS though, there's three buckets. There's SaaS, and there's really only 8 SaaS companies that matter, right? There's SAP, there's Oracle, there's Workday, there's Salesforce. There's only like 8 of them that really matter, right? Seriously. And they back up in their own environments. Then you have the people whose data is in the public cloud, like an Azure, AWS, or some other kind of cloud like that, Google Cloud or whatever, in which case they're going to use a Druva, because Druva is their biggest part of their business is backing up data that lives in the public cloud and then drops it down to be stored in the public cloud. We never see Druva in corporate hallways. I can't tell you the last time we called on an account, and we're calling on thousands of accounts that they was using Druva. But Druva is, their business is, I've got data in the public cloud, I'm going to back that up and put it somewhere else in either that public cloud or another public cloud. Like I'll back it up from AWS to Azure, Azure to AWS. That's Druva's gig. They started doing remote sites, and then they transitioned the business over time into backing up cloud data. But they're now seeing more competition from Commvault, Rubrik, Veeam, which they didn't see in the early years. So they're still a solid company, but we just don't see them or hear about them.
What happened a few years ago, there were a few companies who back up laptop, connected, many of these, and it was pretty hot. And all these companies disappear, got acquired, something like that.
Yeah, all of them
Laptops
disappear.
still exist and need to be backed up.
Yeah, OneDrive killed it.
Yeah.
OneDrive, Microsoft. They have this way of taking monopolies. I don't know how, and I'm not saying that they've never done it before, but OneDrive. Right? Why do you need a backup app? You just use OneDrive. Pay a little bit of cloud money every month and have a backup, and you can restore, you can roll back, right? Why do you need to back up laptops anymore if you've got OneDrive? So I think OneDrive killed everything. Okay, so this is a key slide. We tell every reseller worldwide, do not bring us in to just shake hands. Hey, how do you do? Let us tell you about it. We call that account mapping. We're not interested. We tell them, bring us in when the customer is really open to switching their backup storage. And that doesn't mean they're going to do it. They're open to the dialogue. They're open to the possibility of switching the back, because otherwise we'll be wasting our time. What drives it? We track this like you can't believe, right? Because again, this is all we do. What drives it? First is they're doing a big capacity buy, and they want to look around right before they cut a purchase order. So maybe they've got a petabyte of data going in the data domain, and they need another couple hundred terabyte. And before they keep committing, they lift their head and say, before I keep going down this path, should I start to move my backup storage to something else? And they look around, right? And then when they look around, they say, oh, there's something better. I'm going to buy that instead. That's a moment when they're spending money, right? You got to be there when they're spending money, and they need to spend money here because they need more capacity.
And you learn the limitation of the product you replace.
Oh, we know them all. We'll get into that. We're going to get into that. The current storage is old, and they're doing a partial or full refresh, right? Whatever they're using is finally old. And so they say, okay, it's time to replace it. People run backup storage longer than primary storage because it's backup. It's back office, right? So as a result, people tend to run their backup storage 6 and 7 years. Primary storage 3, 4, 5 years, right? But backup, they'll go much longer. But sooner or later it gets old, right? And anything that's hardware is going to start to break down, right? Either moving parts, or if it's solid state, even heat cool, right? It's going to break down. So this is when they go to refresh, just like you refresh your automobile. They're tired of forklift upgrades. They're tired of somebody coming to them and saying, we no longer make that front-end controller. We make this one. And by the way, all your disk shelves don't work with it. You've got to rebuy all your disk shelves, or vice versa. Right? And that happens to a lot from these other vendors, without mentioning names. They're tired of poor support. The support's gotten horrible from some of these big companies, right? They're tired of premature end of life. What is premature end of life? I bought in January of 2025, last year, some storage. And I just got a letter that said at the end of this year they're discontinuing it and support's going to go through the moon. I look and I go, that means I'll have only used it for 2 years. I didn't get my full useful life out of that. You're discontinuing it and you're penalizing me by jacking up the main support. That irritates them. And the big companies do that all the time. All the time. Talk to customers all the time. They're outside of their backup window and their backup is running. There was one customer I went and talked to their CIO, and their backups were still running at dinner time at 5 o'clock. By the way, with us, they're finished at 6 a.m. in the morning. But the point is they can't have backups running during the day because that soaks the network, soaks the servers, and people can't work. The restores are too slow. We talked about that earlier, right? It takes too long and people are down too long and you lose user productivity. The security is not where they want it. By the way, you're going to send everybody these slides, right? Did you say that at the beginning?
I did let Philippe know, but I didn't say that to everyone. I will be sending everyone a PDF of all these slides at the end, so no worries.
Yeah, I forgot to tell you. You were going to do that, I thought, but maybe I was supposed to. Either way, I'll fall on my sword here. Yeah, she's going to send a PDF of all these slides so you have them, okay? Hit by ransomware attack and the backup storage was deleted. And so they're running with the hair on fire saying, I got to find something else. They changed their backup app and their backup storage no longer works. So example, if I'm using Commvault to Hyperscale X and I switch from Commvault to Veeam, Hyperscale X only works with Commvault. If I'm running NetBackup to NetBackup appliances and I turn around and switch from NetBackup to Rubrik, Rubrik can't write to NetBackup appliances, only NetBackup can. If I'm using Rubrik, we see a customer right now switching from Rubrik to Veeam, all that Rubrik hardware has to go out because Veeam can't use that Rubrik hardware, right? So there's a lot of storage that's specific to just one backup app. No different than Object First. If I'm using Veeam to Object First and I decide to switch to Rubrik, gotta throw the Object First out. It only works with Veeam. So that's a problem, right? So customers want backup storage that allows them to switch their backup app and keep their backup storage. Right? So when this happens, they got to throw the backup storage away. Want to improve their disaster recovery capabilities, right? They're not happy with where those are at. They're spending too much time on daily management, and they want to reduce the amount of IT time they're spending. Too many backup failures in a lot of cases, and there's others as well. So when we walk into an account, we're looking for the pain point, because they're only going to spend money if they're in pain, right? If they're way outside the backup window, they got to spend money. If they got to refresh because the gear keeps failing, they got to spend money. They're doing a capacity buy anyway, they've got to spend money, right? So we're looking for the people who say, I've got to do something here. And what's their choice? They can buy more from their incumbent. They can buy one of the other players we had on the other slide, or they can buy us, okay? When we say we have a 70+% competitive win rate, what we mean by that is, if the customer cuts a purchase order to somebody, anybody, meaning to the current vendor, another competitor of ours, or us, somebody won, somebody lost. If they never cut a PO, then nobody won, nobody lost because they didn't buy anything. A lot of times projects just disappear, right? That's just IT. But if they actually buy something, either more from their current vendor, we call that a loss or a win, depending if we won or lost it. So what's our go-to-market? We have over 200 folks in our sales organization. We have over 80, we mentioned, field sales reps, 62 field systems engineers. I said 63 earlier because we have one on the global systems integrator team. And this is some of the countries where we have sales teams, and I kind of rattled those off earlier, so I don't need to repeat that and bore you. Oh yeah, I forgot one in Qatar. Where else did I miss?
Where is your inside sales or telesales?
So we have inside sales, which does prospecting calling, just calling to get prospects to give to the field sales team. We have a team in Bedford, Mass, a team here in Marlborough, Mass, and a team in Dublin. We've got 15 people in Dublin that do prospecting calling.
Dublin in Europe, Ireland. Dublin in Ireland.
Yeah, Dublin, Ireland. In telesales, we have 10 here and 4 in Dublin. So we've got about 19 people calling all day in Dublin, and we're adding more.
And for you, the difference between telesales and inside sales?
Good question. Inside sales prospects all day. So we also have a different set of people, and 4 of them are in Dublin. 3 of them are in Dublin. We have, first of all, 5 data researchers. Actually, almost 6, but we'll do this one first. The 5 data researchers do nothing all day but try to figure out who the director who owns the backup app and the backup storage is. There's no good lists out there. Believe me, I've been looking forever. They're horrible. So what they do is they look up in Zoom Info who's all the directors of the company. Then they use LinkedIn and they use Google and they use other things to figure out who is the person who owns backup. It's a lot of work. The good news is 80% of the time when a salesperson calls that director, it is the right one. So they get it right 80% of the time. So there's 5 people who do that, okay? Then there is 31, because we have a few open recs, 31 people in inside sales that call those directors all day and try to get them to know them, build a rapport, so that when they have a project, they let us in. So we find 20% of our new customer bookings through cold call prospecting. The other 80% comes from resellers or GSIs bringing us into deals. All right, so it's 80% is resellers and GSIs walking us into customers, 20% is us pounding the door down with cold calling. The telesales team of 14, we break the customer base into kind of like 2 halves, right? Well, it's 40, 60 really, but the top 2,200 customers, we leave with the field sales reps because these are the bigger customers, right? The bottom 20, I think it's 3,000, I keep saying 27, but it's 3,000 now. 3,000 are with the telesales team, and they're working over the phone with those. It still all goes through the reseller, but we have the sales team bifurcated in telesales handles the smaller ones, and the bigger ones are handled by field sales. The resellers, I said that, hey, there you go, 80% of deals through resellers, Exagrid sales teams in 30 countries, distributors and resellers in 70 countries, customers installed in over 100 customers. We talked about the integrators earlier, so it's we're working with HCL and Kyndryl. We have a third one in testing. We're not going to mention them because they're in testing. In fact, as part of HCL, we're part of what's called Backup Next. They tested us with Commvault, with NetBackup, with Rubrik, etc., with Veeam. And we have all the contracts in place, and they added us to what's called Backup Next. It's one of their solution sets when they present and propose to customers. So backup storage requirement categories. We started to talk about this earlier. The way we see the world and working with customers, and we say all the time, do we have this right to customers? And it took us a long time to get this slide right because it's what the customers see and care about. For user productivity, you care about fast backup so you're not soaking the service and the network, they say yes. You care, which is a short backup, and you care about data integrity, data resilience, and secure data so that you can recover it. Because if you want it, you can't recover it. Because the data is corrupted, or the data is not checksummed, or the data is corrupted, or the data is compromised and encrypted, people can't restore, and they say yes. And that also not only means the data is ready to restore, you need fast restores and fast VM boots. That's all about the user productivity. The business continuity we talked about earlier, they got to have a product that works well. They have to have a product that has redundancy, so if things fail, it keeps running. That has security because of all the cyber attacks that occur now. That have fast ransomware recovery. If their primary storage gets wiped away, how do you restore that primary data? You know, there was a public company, you know the name of it. They're a high-tech company. They're a very big high-tech company. And they got attacked. It was in the news. They got attacked. And they brought in a security company, and the security company told them they were going to be down for 30 days. We had them up and running in 3 days. I got an email from the CEO of this public company saying thank you, and they gave us another $1 million order. That was our reward, right?
Is that because they were already running your solution?
Yeah, so we were running Exagrid, and we had the data. When we get to show you how we protect against ransomware recovery, we're the only ones that do it the way we do it.
Who was it that told them that it would take 30? Who told them it would take 30 days?
They brought in a security consulting firm to when you have a ransomware attack, you usually bring in somebody that's going to help you figure this out, clean up all your stuff, right? So you bring these specialty companies in. They said, you guys will be down for 30 days. They were down for 3.
Did the security company know that they were running Exagrid?
I don't know, but even if they did, they probably wouldn't have known what we do. You know, the likelihood that security companies like that know.
Hopefully that company knows now.
Yeah, exactly right.
Sorry, Bill, that company, what was the consultant, was that the company what was brought in under their cyber insurance? which is very
Yes,
expensive.
yes.
And that just shows you that you pay a lot of money for cyber
Yeah,
insurance.
yes.
And that just shows you that you pay a lot of money for cyber insurance.
Yeah. So cyber insurance, the first thing cyber insurance will do is recommend companies, if you don't have one, to come in and help you figure this out. In the US, the FBI comes in, I mean, everybody comes in, right? It's crazy. Cost of ownership. You got to make sure your product's scalable because your data's growing, or else you're going to hit scalability walls and have to throw away what you have. You need a low carbon footprint, right? Because everybody's worried about the cost of electricity, if you will. Low rack space, because if you're paying by data center space, you want to reduce the storage through data deduplication as far down as you can to lower cost. You want to have very little touch time. You want to read something if you're bored, like if you're really having a hard time sleeping. Instead of going to the pharmacy and getting like Sominex, I got a better thing for you. Go to our website. This is guaranteed to put you out every night. We have about 300 customer success stories on the website where the customer company name is there, their title is there, their name is there, they're quoted, and there's a 2-page user story. And they talk through how their backups are faster, their restores are faster, how they ever touch the system at all, right? And by the way, if you go to Gartner Peer Insights, we have over 200 customers talking up there on Gartner Peer Insights. Right? If you read those, you really see the impact that Exagrid has in the customer's words, right? And especially the Peer Insight reviews, because they write them. Nobody gets to see them. Nobody gets to see them. Obviously, you don't want the forklift upgrades we talked to. The planned product obsolescence is when they end of life the product on you long before you got useful life. And price protection. We have price protection here at Exagrid, and I'll explain it later. But a lot of these companies go in and drop their price to get footprint. And they undersize. And in 9 months, you're out of storage. You need more. They got the hook in your mouth, and they jack the price up. I'm not going to say what companies do that. I will say this. It happens all the time. Ask customers. Customers are sick of it. It happens all the time, and they're very angry about it. They get undersized with a low price, and then they later run out of space, and they have to come back and buy more, and the price goes through the moon. It's just not, I don't find it a good tactic, but it happens.
Likes to be baited and switched. Baited and switched. Nobody likes it.
Yeah, nobody likes it. And then we've already talked about support, right? And we have, by the way, and we'll talk about this later, but we assign the techs, no junior techs, no repeating yourself, right? In theater support. 91 to 92% of our customers at any given time are on our health reporting system, means all their alerts and alarms are pouring into our system. This allows us to really see all kinds of stuff. Like we figure out usage patterns and what we need to do to make the product better. And we see, deduplication ratios based on the kinds of data coming in. We get a lot of information from 90% of our customers so we can continue to make the product better. This is what we figured out. This is what we're all about. And this is why we're standing here as a growing, profitable company. Because if you look at storage, I'm going to throw an interesting question at you. Outside of Dell, HPE, NetApp Everpure, in the corporate data center, not the AI cloud, what storage companies are taking market share from Dell, HP, NetApp, and Everpure and doing it profitably?
Excellent.
We're one. Who else? Huawei. Who else?
Hitachi? Hitachi?
No, they're going backwards in storage. Nobody else, big or small, can make the claim. I've checked with every VC, every investment banker. I've talked to almost every one of the companies out there. Growing profitably against Dell, HPE, NetApp, and Everpure is us and Huawei. That's it. Growing profitably. It's not easy. So why am I saying this? I'm not saying this that they can make, oh my God, we're in a really hot business. We are, we're in a really hot business. Going up against those guys is like going up against Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola. How you going to do? Years ago, your homeland, I saw Richard Branson speak. And he was a very successful entrepreneur, as we all know. Started many successful companies, right? One of the world's richest men. And he actually said in a presentation he started a cola company and he called it Virgin Cola.
I remember it, yeah.
Yeah? And he said, and he retold the story because it was a lesson to be learned. He said that he got a little bit of market share in the UK and nowhere else in the world. He said, I learned a hard lesson. Some markets are just shut down. They're just shut down. There's a bolt across the door and you can't get in. So the storage market against Dell HP, NetApp and Everpure is similar. Right? It's similar. Right? So Huawei gets in mostly due to price. That's how they get in. To your point, they get good products, they work, so they keep the customer.
And I think
But they
in a company have time and money, and they don't care if they lose today, they will win later.
That's right. Probably subsidized by the government because lots of China companies are. But the point is they're much less costly, so people who care about saving money will buy them. What did Exagrid figure out, right? Because we're not the price leader by any shape in the imagination. We're not the lowest price, we're not the highest price. We're kind of in the middle, okay? HP still wants a lot less than we are. Right? Dell did in the main more than we are. Some cheap disk less than we are, right? Depends. Well, the first thing is this. You have two choices. You can put primary storage behind the backup application. Cohesity, Rubrik, Veeam, you name it. And it's not optimized for large backup jobs. I'm going to throw something at you you're not even going to believe. When we test side by side with Everpure SSD, our HDD systems are twice the performance. You see, that's just the biggest lie I've ever heard. And it's not, because they're not optimized for large backup jobs that are bringing lots of directories together. They're optimized for NAS files. They're optimized for transactional files.
Yeah, and not for large sequential write.
No, they're not.
It's a backup session instead of IOPS, random, etc.
Right, you're hired, by the way.
You're hired, he said.
Secondly, they don't do job concurrency to get parallel jobs. They don't use the advanced protocols from the backup apps like NetBackup OST or the Veeam Data Mover. They allow the backup app to do the encryption and replication, which soaks the backup server and slows things down. All of these things slow backups down. I tell everybody, it's not the SSD. We all know SSD is faster than HDD. We all know the quantum computers are faster than regular computers. That's not the question. It's their software that's in the way. It's not set up for backup. And we are. We do job concurrency. We do optimize for large backup jobs. We do the replication in hardware. We do the encryption at rest in hardware, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's no integration of the backup advanced protocols. So if you use CIFS behind Veeam versus the Veeam Data Mover is 30% faster. Same with NetBackup OST. It's 20 to 30% faster, right? We already talked about no jobs. They don't do any deduplication. Everpure does a little bit. We're going to talk about that later. But most of the primary storage, Dell, HP, NetApp, Hitachi, don't do any deduplication. There's no duplication in Dell PowerStore, in HP Electra, in NetApp E-Series, and in Hitachi Vantara. So if you have any kind of retention, it gets expensive very fast in backup.
Yeah, you just mentioned PowerStore from Dell, not PowerProtect.
No, PowerStore, the primary storage. PowerProtect's backup. Yeah. Network, this is primary storage here, sitting behind the backup app. Network facing, right, with limited security, because these things are sitting on the network facing. So when we show up, what we replace, about 70% of our life is right here. 65% actually, 65, 35. So 65% of our life is going in and replacing somebody's primary storage behind the backup app. Why? It's taken them too much time to manage it, pools of storage. It's not that secure. It is slow for backups. It is expensive because the amount of data builds up very quickly because you're not reducing the data behind it. So it's expensive, it's slow, it's hard to manage, it's not secure. This is what we replace 65% of the time.
It was not designed. It was not designed.
No, it's designed for primary storage workloads. I get it. And they, by the way, and there's not a single backup feature in any of them. All we do is backup features, morning, noon, and night, because this is all we do, right? If we, again, deduplication appliances, they're all the same. Net Backup, Huawei, HPE store ones, Dell Data Mail are all the same. They take the data in line as it's coming in, and they only store deduplicated data. To give you an idea of why we didn't go that route, if you do inline deduplication, it's about 1/6 the speed of writing to disk without deduplication. Because in the amount of compute it takes, let's take Dell Data Domain. They use what's called 8 KB blocks. And then they use a technique called variable length content splitting, which means that if the 8 KB blocks don't match, they'll make the block a little big, a little small to try to increase the amount of matches. The amount of compute it takes to do that is crazy. And at 8 KB, for every 10 terabyte, you're comparing a billion blocks. Now I go to 100 terabyte, 500 terabyte, billions of blocks. Huge compute, huge compute. It takes time. So they take and they put some software on the media server to do some of the work there.
All the hashes are already in memory. All the block already stored.
Yeah, but they have to look them all up. It's all the lookups. It's slow as a dog. And so what they do is they put some of the software, like DD Boost or HPE Catalyst, on the media server of the backup app. Now what are they doing? Stealing compute and memory from the backup server, so it slows the backups down. All you're doing is pushing on the waterbed here, and it pops up over here. So they do get it, therefore, to 1/3 the speed of disk, right? They double the performance using DD Boost and Catalyst, but it's still slow. So every time we test next to any of these we're so much faster, it's pathetic. And we'll explain why in a second. So if you use any straight disk, and the backup window's done at 6 in the morning, you use these appliances, the backup app's got to be done at 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the afternoon. It just takes longer. So inline deduplication is so compute intensive, so compute bound, right? Now, Dell puts some flash in there to fasten the hash table, right? But you can't keep everything in memory. It will cost you a fortune. So they've got to page it in and out of memory, right? And then you've got to do the compares, and it's just a ton of compares. They have to have the fastest processors on the market. Every time new parts come out, they got to put them in there. And it makes it very expensive. In fact, if you drop the clock speed, one clock speed, it's a 70% change in the price of processor. So what you end up here with is a situation where these appliances are slow. They're slow for backups, and they're very slow for restores. You've got to rehydrate all that data for every request. So we looked at this, and we said, wow, both of these are broken. The first one is faster for backups because you're just writing it right to the disk, and it's faster for restores because the data's sitting there on 100. But they don't scale as well, they don't have good security, and they're really expensive because of the amount of data you have to store on them. The deduplication appliances collapse the cost of the storage some, but then they're slow for backups, slow for restores. They're still network facing. So we won a deal up in Canada. One of the GSIs brought us in. And Dell Data Domain, to do ransomware security, they needed the data domain on-prem. They needed CyberVault, their security software, and a second data domain for the CyberVault to have a second copy on-prem. It doubled their cost. It was so expensive, that's why we got in the door. Because their approach required so much extra storage to try to guard against a ransomware attack. So we looked at all of this and we said, what do you really want here? Let's go all the way back before any of this existed and go back to the days of tape. What did people do with tape? They did what's called disk staging. They did a week or two on disk and the rest on tape. Why? They needed the speed of disk for backup and the speed of disk for restore, but they couldn't afford disk for long-term retention, so they used tape. And we said, that's so stupid. So really, what is deduplication? It replaces tape. It replaces the long-term retention, but it stinks for backup and restore. Primary storage is great for backup and restore, but it doesn't have any deduplication, so it stinks for retention. So what did we do? We said, when a customer keeps the backup app and replaces storage, right? We did this, sorry. I'm going to go right to this. So if you look at it, If you look at inline deduplication appliances, Huawei Ocean Protect, Dell Data Domain, HPE StoreOne Net Backup appliances, do they save storage? They do. They do deduplication and they compare each backup, right? And about the average backup, by the way, changes at about 2% between backups. How do we know that? We got 91% of our customers reporting into our HS system. I got 5,000 customers telling me exactly what change rate is. So it's about 2% from one to the next. And I'm going to save WAN savings because I'm only going to move the changes from backup to backup across the WAN. But that's all an inline deduplication appliance is going to do for you. If I buy primary storage, it doesn't do either of those because it has no deduplication, except what's in the backup app. So the backups are great. They're as fast as disk. And the restores are as fast as disk. That's great. But the cost of my WAN and the cost of my storage is through the moon. So we said we need to have storage with deduplication. We need to be able to only move the changes across the WAN. We have to have a front end with disk for fast backups and fast restores. You got to have security in a way in which you're not network facing because it's easier to get at you if you're network facing. And you got to make sure that your backup window doesn't grow as your data grows. You don't want to buy a new system and a year later you're chasing the backup window again, so you need scale out. So we decided you have to address all 6 things to have a complete solution. So what happens? Here's your primary storage, the Dells, the HPs, etc. Here's your inline deduplication appliances. On the primary storage, you get good performance, reasonable performance. It's not the best performance because they're not optimized for backup. They're not no dedicated backup features or integrations. No air gap security, you're network facing. No deduplication to reduce the storage further. So it's a high cost with longer term retention. Doesn't work. The deduplication appliances do reduce the storage because they have advanced deduplication. But they're slow for backups due to the inline dedupe. They're slow for restores because they've got to rehydrate for every request. They're scale up, every one of them. If you noticed, every one of them is a front-end controller with disk shelves. Why? Because if you go with block level deduplication and a hash table, you've got to keep the hash table together. And it forces you into an architecture of a controller and disk shelves. Furthermore, you can't put the whole hash table in memory, so you've got to keep paging it in and out because the memory would cost you a fortune because the hash table just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So that creates a situation where you don't have scale out. So imagine this. I take a Data Domain or Huawei or HPE, and I have 100 terabyte today with a controller and disk shelves. And then it goes to 200 terabyte, and I add some more disk shelves. What just happened to my performance? Went in half. Why? I didn't add any processor. I didn't add any memory. I didn't add any networking. But I doubled the amount of data that needs to be deduplicated. So the backup window just keeps doing this with those architectures. It keeps expanding and expanding and expanding and expanding. So Exagrid walked in and we said, okay, we like storage, primary storage for backups and restores. Don't do any inline deduplication. Don't do anything to the data. Get it to the disk as fast as you can. And optimize our system for the fastest backups for large backup jobs. And do job concurrency. And use the fastest protocols out there that, whatever they are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We do actually 6 things that our competitors don't do to improve the performance into our disk landing zone. And then keep the most recent backup so you can restore. So let me explain. Think of bifurcating data. How do you bifurcate it? There really is 2 types of data, and everybody else sees it as 1. In backup, we see it as 2. There's the data that keeps your users productive. You need that right there, ready to go. And what data is that? The most recent data. Because nobody, if they delete a file, overwrite a file, have a corrupted encrypted file, wants a file from last week. They want last night's file, right? They want the most recent copy to restore from. But I keep retention. Weeklies, monthlies, and yearlies, why? I get a financial audit, and I got to show how things looked 6 months ago or a year ago. I get some kind of regulatory audit, GLBA or Sarbanes-Oxley or HIPAA for healthcare, whatever, and I need to go back 18 months, 2 years, 3 years on that data, right? I get a legal discovery because I got a lawsuit. And I got to go back and show how files looked at different points in time. But when you get those kinds of audits, do you need the data right away? No. They got to come in and do an audit, and they tell you the audit date is July 18th. Oh, I got time to then get the data together. So we realized that you could keep a front end with just the most recent data populated, and then not the rest of it. You can deduplicate it and leave it as deduplicated, so that you're not impeding user productivity by waiting for rehydration of deduplicated data. And at the same time, you're lowering the cost of storage for all your retention. So what did we basically do? We took peanut butter and put it together with jelly. We took the primary storage and put it with a retention thing. So think of it this way. If I have a data domain, well, it's slow. It's slow for restores. It doesn't scale. I got to put primary storage in front of it if I want fast backups and fast restores. But it's too expensive to do that, and it's too hard to manage. People tried to do that. They tried to put primary storage in front of the data domain. That's basically what we did. We basically have disk staging for fast backups and restores, and we replaced tape with a deduplication appliance, right? So we're basically the best of both. We are primary storage and we're a deduplication appliance, all in one, integrated. The data is coming in at high speed. We do nothing to it. We let it land on a landing zone. We optimize for fast backups. We optimize every which way we can to improve the performance, and we beat anybody. I'll put it in a lab against anybody. We beat anybody in ingest performance. The restore performance is going to be whatever the speed disk is. So we're going to be the same speed as disk for restore performance. So we're going to be faster for ingest performance, which means slower backup windows. So what do we get? We get the fastest backups because of all the work we do. We get fast restores. Notice I didn't say fastest, because any disk is going to restore the data at a certain speed, right? That's just, you know me, I have to tell the truth. Tier gap security, I'm going to explain in a minute, so we'll go to that in a second. Advanced deduplication to reduce the footprint. Now, what did we do with deduplication? We didn't use block. We knew that was a mistake. We created our own approach to deduplication, which is similarity detection, and which allows us to not have a hash table. It allows the metadata to move with the data across our whole system, which means we could do scale out. Each of our appliances has processor, memory, networking, and storage. And so that if you double, triple, quadruple, quintuple the data, we double, triple, quadruple, quintuple the processor, the memory, the disk, and the networking. So if your backup window is 6 hours at 100 terabyte, it's 6 hours at 500 terabyte, it's 6 hours at a petabyte, it's 6 hours at 5 petabyte. Because you have to keep bringing all the resources to bear as the data load gets larger and larger and larger if you want to keep a fixed length backup window. Around the no plan product obsolescence, we design the system so that any size or age appliance can be mixed and matched. That way, if we discontinue a model because we can no longer get the components for that model, you can keep using that model in the system. And we'll continue to support it without jacking up your maintenance. And why? Because you've got to get your full useful life. We'll say on HDD, we'll guarantee you that at least we get 7 years of useful life. Nobody does that. We'll guarantee you 7 years at a minimum useful life. We will leave your maintenance support as is. You're not going to get screwed if we discontinue that particular model, because you can mix and match any age or size appliance in a scale-out system. We have everything's 2U, so everything's low rack space, no matter what size our appliances are, HDD or SSD, small or large, they're all 2U. We have low power and cooling for all of the boxes. Again, they're smaller boxes. We have price protection. Now we're changing our price protection starting July to 3-year price protection. That for 3 years, whatever you paid for that model up front, that's your price for the next 3 years. Therefore, you don't have the problem of we sell you low and then screw you later, right? We're the only ones that put that in writing and have, by the way, for a long time. And we'll talk more about the customer support. So here's the key here. The key here is Exagrade is focused on backup.
Not restore. Not restore. Only on backup, not restore.
Yeah, only on backup. So only on backup. So we have to win on every front. All of our engineers spend all day long, the company spends all day long saying, how do we make this better? How do we make this better? That's all we do, right? We've been incrementally making it better and better and better and better. And so I'm going to skip these 2 slides because they're too detailed. You can look at them in the PDF. On the product just working, this is a mature product. Right now, I have 5 customers on the customer support hot list. 5. That's 1 in every 1,000. That's unheard of. Unheard of. 5 customers on the customer hot list. This product just works. We already mentioned a lot of these other things, the 300 success, 200 partners, the backup awards, the retention. 99% of our customers, over 99% actually, are on maintenance and support contracts. I don't think any company's ever said that. We only have 44 customers out of 5,200 that are not on a valid maintenance support contract that they're paying for. That's a testament to our support that higher percentage of customers are on our maintenance and support. Only 44 are not. So we mentioned we have backup integrations with a lot of backup apps. Okay, and we're going to talk about in a minute here some of the things we do. So with Veeam as an example, we have a lot of integrations with Veeam, right? We are 30x faster with the Veeam Fast Clone. We've integrated with Veeam Fast Clone so that when you recover from synthetic fulls, we do that faster than anybody to create a full restore. We use the Veeam Data Mover in a multitude of ways, which is their protocol they designed end to end. And because we're running appliances, guys, we can run their software in our appliance, right? So we have the Veeam Data Mover here and here, and we create a tunnel that's not only secure, encrypted over the wire, but 30% faster than CIFS, right? So those kinds of things make a difference. Not only are you getting better security, but you're also getting better performance, right? We support both the Veeam Data Mover and S3, because with Veeam, you want to do your O365 data lives in the cloud. You're going to back that up via S3, but you're going to do your core backups, your VMs, using the Veeam Data Mover for performance, right? Because those are bigger. We can take Veeam data that's deduplicated, leave their deduplication on, run around the industry and ask companies who else does this, and we further deduplicate it. We take their 2-to-1 deduplication, and they'll say if you call them it's 2-to-1 to 14-to-1. We further deduplicate their duplicated data to collapse the retention storage. So those are the kinds, and I'm not going to do them all, that's the kinds of things we do. We integrate to Veeam Sober. And what Veeam Sober is we become an extent, what's called a Veeam extent, for every one of our appliances. And we communicate with Veeam. So let's say a lot of data is coming at appliance 1 and 2, and they want to send more data there. But appliance 3 is yawning, going, I don't get any data. I'd like to get some of this data. It will tell it 1 or 2 are busy, and it'll push the data to the third appliance. And what is that? That's front-end load balancing. You pick up more performance because you're better utilizing all the targets. And you'll say, but if you send the data into a different appliance, what happens with the deduplication? Well, first of all, we deduplicate the data when it moves from the landing zone to the repository, but we have global deduplication. We literally deduplicate all the data across all the repositories, and we also have back-end automatic load balancing, meaning if the repository on one appliance is really full and another one is really empty, we load balance. We virtualize all the repositories automatically to make sure that one is in full and one is empty or anywhere in between, right? So that way you're getting full utilization of the repositories. So this is all the code we've been writing over the last 20 years, right? We can scale to a 6 petabyte full backup in a single scale-out system. Data Domain's largest system, the 9910, can do 1.5. We scale to 4 times the size of Dell EMC's largest system, the DD910, the DD9910. Right? We can go to 6 petabyte. They can only go, and by the way, with our SSD product, you'll see we can go to 17 petabyte in a single system. All right. So, but with the HDD, we can go to 6 petabyte in a single system. Rubrik. Let's talk about Rubrik. Rubrik has changed over the years. So early on, they were end-to-end, right? They were, got to buy everything from them. It's an end-to-end solution. There's no part in the play for anyone else. they have morphed and changed over time. After a while, they started to say, all right, you can go buy somebody else's hardware if you want for the end-to-end. You can buy Dell, you can buy HP, and they started certifying, right, what they call reference architecture hardware. And that allowed customers to buy non-Rubrik hardware. And they didn't care anymore if they were selling their hardware or HP or Dell. And in fact, they stopped paying their sales reps on the hardware. No quota relief, no commissions, and still that way today. After a while, they said, you know what? We're going to disaggregate the brick, the front-end brick, from the storage and allow the customer to buy either the brick hardware from Rubrik or Dell or HP, but the storage from somebody else. Because I might walk into a shop that's all HPE storage that, I'm buying, a Rubrik brick. I want to work with the HPE storage. So they disaggregated it, which means now you can sit behind the Rubrik with any storage. And then lastly, they allowed you, when they disaggregated the storage, to turn off encryption at rest, which is what's required to do deduplication. Nobody can deduplicate encrypted data. I don't care if it's Huawei or you can't name one. All deduplication on the planet requires encryption at rest to be off. All 5,200 of our customers turned encryption at rest off, not across the wire to us. It's encrypted across the wire to us. But we encrypt it when it hits the disk in our systems, because otherwise you can't do deduplication. So what Rubrik now tells customers, what their story is, buy the Rubrik brick. You can buy it as Rubrik hardware, you can buy it as Dell hardware, you can buy it as HP hardware, we don't care. It's Rubrik. Keep about 2 weeks on the Rubrik brick, 2 weeks of backup. Put the rest somewhere else. If you're keeping 12 weeklies and 36 monthlies, either put that up to the cloud, Azure, AWS, or whatever, or put that on some storage on premise, but not on Rubrik. So Rubrik got out of the storage business other than a week or two on the brick, okay? And so they're now telling everybody, go buy whatever storage you want, because they're not in the storage business. They don't want to be in the storage business. If you look at their revenue, it's 100% software, 100% software, okay? So they have a mode, so get ready for this is a key word. They have a mode called, they have a mode called Instant Archive. What is that mode? That's the mode we use. That mode is that the customer keeps a couple weeks on the Rubrik, and then you put all the retention, let's say, on Exagrid. But if you turn on Instant Archive, we also have the 2 weeks that's on the Rubrik. Why do we want that? We want that because A, it means if anything happens to Rubrik, we've got the most recent copy on the Exagrid as well. And secondly, if there's ever a disaster recovery or a ransomware attack that somehow Rubrik can't recover from, we've got the most recent copy to recover for the ransomware attack or the DR attack. So not only do we keep all the retention on the Exagrid, but we keep the same 2 weeks that's on the Rubrik brick. So the majority of Rubrik customers have the archive data go to the cloud. After about 10, 11, 12 months, what's the customer start doing? Screaming, because the cloud cost is eating them alive. You do know, like when AWS says, it's 1.2 cents per gigabyte per month, which is $12 per terabyte per month. That's not what it is. They charge you to read the file. They charge you to delete files. They charge you to purge files. They charge you for egress. They charge you for ingress. There's $1 million a la carte. The real bill is 2 to 4 times per month. Every customer runs into this. And then they call us. My bill is $20,000 a month from AWS or Azure. And so begins the repatriation, right? And then we say, let us show you what will cost to have this data come back on-prem and not be in the cloud. So we wait about 12 months for the customers, so we don't have to argue of what their bills are going to be because they don't believe you. So better off to go in at 12 months when they're already seeing the bill and there's no argument. They know exactly what bill they're getting. And we go in and we show them how to collapse, right, that storage down, right? We can do something nobody else can do with Rubrik. Rubrik, when they do the archive tier, you cannot turn off compression or Rubrik deduplication, only encryption. So any storage that sits behind Rubrik is getting compressed encrypted data, okay? We uncompress it, further deduplicate it. And if they want it back, we put it back into their deduplication and back to their compression and hand it back to them just like they gave it to us. That allows us to reduce. So if you put a Cloudian behind Rubrik, or a Scality, or a Dell ECS, or a NetApp storage grid, anything that's an S3 target, you get no further deduplication other than the roughly 3-to-1 Rubrik gets. With Exagrid, we get somewhere from an additional 3-to-1 to 10-to-1 based on the retention. The longer the retention, the more we're going to save you in space. Which means if you've got any kind of length of retention, we're going to collapse the cost of that storage on-prem or versus the cloud. So we're sitting there right now as the only player that we know of that can uncompress Rubrik data and further deduplicate it. Okay? So we do that with Veeam. 2-to-1, we get 14-to-1. Here we're going to take the 3-to-1 to anywhere from 9-to-1 to 30-to-1. Okay?
In a few weeks with Cohesity.
I'll get to Cohesity. I know you're going to do this to me.
We're running.
You know what? You know, I've learned you guys now, right? I finally figured it out. Took me a few years, but I figured out where the traps were. Not all of them, because I'm sure you got some new ones, but I got the trap doors down. All right, so. Oh, you guys are so much fun. All right, so. Whoop. Hang on. So, if you take Rubrik and you put a Rubrik brick on-prem and a Rubrik brick off-prem for DR, and you put 2 weeks on each one of them, remember, Rubrik's different than how they think, then the Exagrid on-prem sits behind it with Instant Archive on. We'll have the 2 weeks and all the long-term retention. We'll replicate that off-prem, and again, we'll have the most recent and all the data, including the most recent and all the data, off-prem. Okay? So that's sort of the first config. The second config is on-prem with just Exagrid as DR. This is the on-prem Rubrik going to the on-prem Exagrid. And if you want to save money and not put another Rubrik off-prem, then you just have the Exagrid out there as a repository only. You've got all the data, including the most recent 2 weeks, which is why we make sure Instant Archive is always on.
What is the size in dollars of the secondary storage for backup?
That's a question that I could only answer if I had 12 pieces of data. So to understand how much backup storage takes, I need to know the full size backup. I need to know the data rotation, incrementals and fulls. Yeah.
What is the market size
Oh, the market size.
of all the secondary storage dedicated to backup?
So my guess, backup storage sitting behind backup applications in our part of the market, so 50 terabyte and up, I think is like 6.8 to 7 billion. But it's hard to get an exact number on that, so that's me doing the best math and questioning people and asking I can. So call it roughly 7 billion a year that's sitting behind backup apps in the upper mid-market to the enterprise. Okay? All right, so I'm going to skip that. Commvault. We do a lot of integrations with Commvault as well.
But you have plenty of rooms to grow. You own only 3% of this?
We're like a 2-3% market shareholder. My board of directors loves it. We've got so much running room, it's pathetic. Oh, this is the best part for us. And by the way, it's even better than that. All of our competitors really don't care about it. You think Dell cares about backup storage or HP? They're chasing bigger fish to fry. So to us, a $6-7 billion market's huge. To them, it ain't worth it. Because they're 160 billion, 40 billion, right? But to us, it's like, wow. To them, it's It's good news. What we have is a market where the big guys don't pay attention to it because it's too small for them. They're doing no development in it. The only reason why they have it is this. They own the primary storage. So they're already in the door. So by default, they own the backup storage. Do you know Riccardo de Blasio is? So Riccardo was the CRO for Commvault for a long time. He's now at NetApp running all the Americas of NetApp sales. I called him to congratulate him when he went from Commvault to NetApp. And he was saying to me, wow, you guys done way better than I thought. I didn't think anybody could build a standalone backup storage company, really impressive, blah, blah, blah. He said, Bill, you're breaking all the rules. I go, why? He goes, people buy their French fries where they buy their burger. You're standing at the counter or at the drive-through window. You order the burger and you order the fries. You don't go down the street to get the fries. He goes, the burger is the primary storage and the backup storage is the French fries. It's a very interesting way to think about it. We're breaking the mold by getting in and saying, use them for primary storage, use us for backup.
So does it mean that even if some vendor, the few names you mentioned, ignore this part of the business because they realize it's too small versus rather some of them could be interested to, let's say, distribute, OEM, replace their stuff by yours?
So nobody OEMs anymore because these guys can't get their sales reps to pay attention to their own products. So if you look, OEM has really shrunk. You look at HP. HP used to OEM a bunch of players. They wiped them all out except for VAST, right? And that was for the AI clouds, right? So you don't see a lot of OEM. So what you're going to see is either they decide to ignore it or acquire, and that's it. And either way, we're fine. If they decide to ignore it, we keep growing, we build a bigger company. And if they decide to, and because remember, outcomes for all companies are the same. You know this, we've talked about this. It's either you get acquired by a strategic, Dell, HP, NetApp, whatever, you get acquired by a PE firm, or you go public. We have the option of all three right now. And we're not taking any of them. We don't want to do anything. My board is dead set on we can be a lot bigger.
The last four, let's say, ER, I can say that, the recurrent 12 months revenue for you, it's between 220, 240?
We don't say what our revenue is. We don't want anybody to know. We never say it.
Good try, though.
Yeah, last time you said you approached, I think, 200.
Yeah, so I'll just say this, we don't.
Say 10, 12, 15% growth?
So we don't say what our revenue is. We don't say what our EBITDA is. But I will tell you this, our numbers are very good. And we're very happy.
But you are below 300.
We don't say what our numbers are, Senator. So at Commvault, we're integrated with Commvault in many ways. We use spill and fill the same way we use SOBA, where you can have all the backups coming in and switch to the appliances for front-end performance. By the way, we can take, if Commvault dedupe is off, then we dedupe it. If they leave Commvault dedupe on, we take their 5-to-1 up to 15-to-1. If they leave compression on, we can uncompress the Commvault data and further deduplicate it. So we don't care if they enable or disable compression, enable or disable deduplication. We're way ahead of everybody in this, by the way. Nobody's doing this to the level we're doing it, or even close to it. If you go further, I'll skip here, and this is Commvault again with spill and fill. We've got 9 certified, meaning Veritas certified them, integrations with NetBackup. We take in accelerator data, and we're the only ones, they can't even do it with their own appliances. We can reconstitute a full in our landing zone. They can't even do that. We do OST integration for faster backups and for unbalanced retention. OST also allows us to do unbalanced retention from the primary to the second site. We're integrated to their analytics, so we show up, all the data from NextBridge shows up in their analytics pages. We, again, use their disk pooling to do the job management, automatic job management, and front-end load balancing, right? So again, you can get this when you get all the slides, but we do a lot of integrations, and every one of these went through their certification lab, okay? Even with Oracle, we use what's called RMAN channels. A lot of customers use Oracle RMAN Direct and not a backup app to back up their Oracle. We've got a lot of customers that do this. And they have a thing called channels, which is, again, like Veeam SOBA, Commvault, Spill and Fill, NetBackup disk pooling, etc. And the same thing happens. If it's going towards any appliance, and there's another appliance that's full, it just sends it to another one, and it's all the same story, if you will. More importantly, we want to get to the security. So currently, I continue to ask the salespeople, systems engineers, everybody, is there a security feature we're missing that holds us out of any deal? And the answer is no. We can actually, we'll get to ransomware in a second, but we encrypt at the drive level, meaning we use Western Digital and Seagate Drive that have built-in encryption at rest. Happens in nanoseconds. picks up about 20% increase in performance over the way everybody else does it for backup, and increases and reduces the backup storage. We encrypt, of course, over the WAN. We have role-based access control. We have a separate IT and security officer role, and it takes 2 logins to make key changes so that you make sure some rogue IT guy doesn't go off and make changes. By the way, and it's getting higher, 82% of our customers now have 2-factor authentication on. I was talking to somebody, you know these big 4 companies I was talking to the CTO at one of those 4 companies, and this person said to me, wow, that's extremely higher than our customer base. And I know it is, because it took me a long time to get it there. Most customers don't want to turn on 2FA, stupid as it sounds. We as consumers use it, IT people don't. So we've got that going up. We have TLS certs, we have HTTPS built into the product, we do secure SMB signing, we do IP-based whitelisting, we do SSH key support to stop getting to root password, and we're going to get into ransomware in a second. When you bring up our screen, our first screen in the product, it shows you what's green and red. Right away you can look and say, I got something I turned off. I got to make sure I turn that back on. Here's the best part. It is now, June 9th. I got 5 weeks. In 5 weeks, I'm going to be able to say, and we've had a lot of customers have ransomware attacks, as you can imagine. We've been able for 12 straight months to recover every one of them. I'll explain how in a second in the next slides. Took us a while to get there, right? Because you've got to learn all the ways, all the attack patterns, right? And we're at a point now where we haven't seen a customer fail to recover from a ransomware attack, coming up on 12 straight months. So watch how we do it. So I mentioned to you before that you have a phishing attempt. Employee clicks on the link or opens the document. The code is launched for password usage. They see all the IT passwords, and off hours they turn off the scanners. They have their way with the network, and then they turn the scanners back on, and then they delete all the backups once they encrypt the primary data. Sometimes they will actually delete the backup data first, right? And then do it in reverse. So, what Exagrid does, as you know, we store all the data in a deduplicated format. The landing zone data is there, but all of the data in the landing zone is in the repository. So even the stuff in our landing zone is deduplicated in the repository, right? So what we have is we have a non-network facing tier, right? Our repository tier, nobody has access to it. The threat actor can't see it, can't get at it, only our object code talks to it, right? So they can come in, so I'll do this a second. They can come in and they can delete all the data in our landing zone. That's no different than deleting primary storage or deleting a deduplication appliance. But we have all the data in the repository, okay? And they can't get at it. They can't get at it. So, they delete all the instructions sent. The repository tier is not impacted. It's non-network facing. It's a tiered air gap. It includes all the data for retention and what was in the landing zone. We have what's called a delayed delete policy. So what is the delayed delete policy? The delayed delete policy is when we get delete requests up here, we don't know if that's an operational delete or if that is a threat actor delete. So we don't delete it until a time clock goes by. So typically customers set that to about 10 days. It uses about 10% more repository, so very small compared to all of our competitors who require another pool to pull this off. So this really knocks down in an integrated system the cost to the system. So what happens is, let's say I have it set up for 10 days, and on Monday, you get a threat attack. Well, you freeze the system, the clock stops, you have 9 more days, and actually you have all the time in the world you want because you stop the clock. As long as you stop the clock, and I'm going to talk in a second, that we don't even trust the customer to stop the clock. We actually do it automatically, and I'll explain that in a second. We don't trust customers to do anything, right? All of our objects are immutable. They don't change, they don't get modified, they don't get deleted. Even if the threat actor encrypts all the data in the landing zone, or encrypts the primary storage, and the backup app sends us encrypted data here, that is not changing the previous backups because that's encrypted data, and therefore it's not deduplicated. So as a result of that, You just back off before that, the encrypted data came in, and all the rest of the data is still there to restore. So what happens? We added a neural engine into our product. And that neural engine watches the delete patterns in the landing zone. And after a while, it learns what's a normal delete pattern for you. You purge your weeklies every week. Once a month, you cut this amount of data out, blah, 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 blah. And we learn. We learn your delete patterns. And if we see, this is all AI driven, if we see your delete patterns change, we alert you and we extend the delayed delete policy indefinitely. Indefinitely. We just don't delete any, there's no clock anymore. We stop the clock.
Until the human do an operation.
Two humans, the IT guy and the security guy. They have to go in and clear it. They have to say, nope, this was us, and we'll clear it, in which case it goes back to the normal delete policy. If they say, no, this was a threat attack, well, then we thwarted it. So what are all the things we need to do? Because what did we learn? We learned they've got to use HTTPS and not HTTP, and we built that into the product that they can't deal otherwise. We learned that customers can maybe get at root passwords in storage, and we locked that with SSH keys. We learned that customers will forget to freeze the system, so we do it automatically, right? We learned that passwords get caught, and they use the password, log into the Exagrade. But with 2FA, that threat actor tries to log into the Exagrade, and I'm at dinner as the IT guy. I get a push notice, and I go, hey, I'm not trying to log in. I deny it. I finish my dinner. I go home and I change the passwords, right? But unless you have my phone with 2FA, the passwords alone are useless. So what we learned over time is all the different ways threat actors were getting in, and we closed all the doors. And as a result of that now, we've gone almost 12 months. Next month will be 12 months without a single customer that couldn't restore.
So it will be announced in July.
I don't know if I'm going to announce it yet or not, but we're going to see. I haven't decided marketing-wise what to do. Now, so what happens here? Auto Detector Guard uses AI to monitor, learn, and train, right? The data gets deleted here. So it could be not all the data. It could just be 30% of the data, 40% of the data, whatever. We alert there's been an abnormal delete. We auto-extend the delayed delete policy indefinitely. All the objects are still immutable here. That doesn't change. The data is ready to restore. When the alert is cleared, we go back to the original policy. But you got to go in, the IT guy's got to go in, and the security guy's got to go in and clear the alert to bring it back to the policy. You guys know that we scale out versus scale up. Skip this a second. We can do DR to a private cloud, a public cloud. We have all the DR scenarios. Doesn't matter. Whatever the customer wants to do, we really don't care. We have multi-site topologies. This is for major data centers. This is not remote sites. You have multiple data centers, and what happens? You could be backing up in 5 data centers, and you want the major data center to be the DR site for those. So in this case, maybe New York is my major data center, and I am backing up in Vancouver, Dallas, LA, but I am going to have those all replicate back to New York for DR. But now I got all this data in New York that's unique to New York. Where's that DR site? I want to cross-replicate back out to Boston, right? So we allow you to cross-replicate, and we allow you to do Spoken Hub, so you can build a set of data centers where whatever data centers you want can be the DR for the other data centers. We also, and this is huge now, with all of the things happening in the world, climate change, more and more customers are asking for this. What is this? What if I lose my primary site and my DR site? There's more natural disasters now than ever before. I'm toast. So now they want a tertiary copy, a third copy. We support 2 topologies, A to B to C, A to B, and A to C. So A to B to C is I replicate to Jan, and then Jan replicates to David, okay? A to B and A to C is I replicate to Jan and I replicate to David, okay? So in this case, C can be a physical site, A to B to C. C can even be AWS or Azure, it can be the cloud. If you want your tertiary copy here, that's fine because you don't care as much that you can't get that out fast because you don't really think you're going to use it that often, but you want it in case. Same is true here, A to B, A to C, A to B here physical, A to C here cloud. So we allow customers to go for tertiary copies, okay? Maintenance and support. And I got 3 minutes. So we already talked about that we have L2s. We have no junior support people in the team at all, and we have no L1s from day one. We only hire senior people. I like to make a joke. If I brought all 67 support people, the L2s, 67 L2s in this room, so 4 or 5 L3s, and sat them around the table, I don't know if you guys know what this word means outside of the US, but you ever hear of like the firm in the US called AARP? It's for retired people. It's like an association for retired people. If I brought all the support people in here, you'd think we were having an AARP meeting. They're all older because we're hiring experts in networking, experts in backup, experts in storage, right? And they're senior people. And we did it because we want the problem to be resolved quickly and not take time. We are 100%, we do our installs remotely. Maybe once a year we may have to go on site, if that. We literally, the customer racks and stacks it, and we totally do the install remotely and always have, right? So that means you don't have to clear us for security. It means you don't have to worry about us. And when we're walking around your hallways that you've got to stay with us the whole time, it's just much more convenient for customers. In our support, and 99% of customers are on support, we charge you a yearly fee. And that not also does it include the support, it includes the health reporting, and it includes all point and full version releases. So our customers, every time we come up with new features like auto detect and guard, they just get it. They just upgrade to the next release and get it. There's no future cost for them once they do it. It's all built in to the maintenance and support model. We already talked about that. That's just a summary slide. And this is sort of the stuff we fixed, right? I'll just leave that up there a second. So what's happening with us and what's going on? If we can get in, we know we're going to win a good percentage of the time. What's the challenge? Customers are married to Dell, HP, NetApp, and Everpure, right? That's the challenge. So we're continuing to work to build out resellers, continuing to work to build out global systems integrators to walk us into more accounts. We know as soon as we're introduced in as a real project, they're going to let us in the sales cycle, and we're going to win 74, 75% of the time. Getting in is really hard for us, right? And they don't respond to marketing, and they don't respond. It's all a relationship business. You need somebody who has a relationship with them to say, take a look at Exagrid, trust me. And they say, well, I've never heard of them, or I don't know them, or I don't use them. And they say, no. I've been selling to you for 10, 15 years. Have I ever steered you wrong? Trust me. Without that trusted relationship, we can't get near these accounts, right? So now we're expanding with the global systems integrators because they take you to the world's largest 5,000 accounts. We are getting into bigger and bigger deals, more $1 million deals, and we're continuing to progress. We continue to grow. We're cash positive every quarter for 22 quarters in a row. We have no debt, and there's nothing we think can stop us from growing. We don't see anything else in our way other than our ability to get into accounts. That's where we are. So questions?
Jan? No.
You have to digest.
No questions because
Everything is clear.
No, everything is clear.
Serge?
No, you have to digest because there are so many data. I don't know how many people make the slides, but it's good. You have to digest it.
51 slides.
With some AI, it's going to be nice.
And we'll send you those. Mary's going to send it.
sent it.
Oh, I sent it. All right.
So do you have a preferred backup software?
So no, because it depends on their workload, right? So, Commvault's good for certain workloads, Veeam for others, Rubrik for others. So we don't push one or the other. We say to the customer, we support them all. Whatever backup app you use, and let us tell you how we can bring value to it. And by the way, I will say this, the majority of our sales aren't with a new backup app being sold on an account. It's us walking into accounts who are failing. They like their backup app, but their backup storage is letting them down, like I showed in that slide of primary storage and dedupe. So we go in, more of our sales are going in and replacing the storage behind a backup app they're keeping.
What?
So for example, we won last month a $1.6 million deal in Poland, replacing data domain behind Commvault. Okay? I am waiting for next week, it's already in the hands of the reseller, they're just finishing the contract with the customer, a $2.8 million deal in Turkey, replacing data domain behind Commvault.
Okay, but Commvault is maintained in the two deals. They maintain.
They keep in
Commvault,
Commvault.
swap the back.
Yes, they keep in Commvault. We're in a deal right now that's about an $800K deal where the customer is using Networker and they're looking to put in Veeam. By the way, Networker is running to Exagrid in the account. They're going to keep Exagrid and replace Networker with Veeam.
So, when I said what backup software you prefer, let's rephrase this and say, with which backup software your product excel the most?
Tough again, because we have such value with each one of them. It really is tough, because we continue to keep adding to all of them value. And we're never going to stop doing that, right? Because otherwise, who are we, right? So we work great with backup apps. The only one we don't know is Cohesity, because we haven't quite shipped it yet. You've already told me today a customer wants to already evaluate it. We haven't even
Multiple,
shipped it yet.
yeah.
And multiple.
Among the backup, Rubrik, Veeam, and Commvault, what is the proportion?
And Cohesity.
And Cohesity, what is the proportion of your install base?
So we don't share that information.
Except for us.
But I will say, no, but I will say Veeam is the highest, because Veeam's the largest backup app company, $2 billion a year. And secondly, Veeam has 500,000 customers. Nobody else even has
At the same
50,000.
time,
But a lot of their customers are SMB, and we tend to only see their top. But even still, let's say we tend to work more on the top 20% of Veeam customers. That's still 100,000 customers. Rubrik only has 6,000 customers.
but at the same time, even if Veeam is the largest, they are still departmental product. I mean, even if a large enterprise select Veeam, each department deploy Veeam, and not like NetBackup was deployed in the past as a large.
So Veeam has a lot of accounts that just use Veeam, big accounts that just use Veeam, as does Commvault. Most people tend to use one backup app across the board these days. So when we walk in, the customer's either keeping what they got or they're changing what they got. And we say, so we don't care, we'll tell you what we got.
What do you hear on the market since NetBackup was acquired by Cohesity? Does it trigger some special
Yes.
move from?
Yes, huge. So let me explain this. So NetBackup, for the longest time, nobody could get at that base. I don't care what backup app it was. Those customers were locked and loaded into NetBackup like you can't believe, all right? And there was no way people were going to penetrate NetBackup. They dominated the enterprise with at least 50, some say 70% market share, whatever it was. And when Cohesity announced they were buying them, every NetBackup customer said, uh-oh, what do we do now? And a good portion of them started to lift their head saying, we have to start thinking about the future now because things are going to change. And some of them, or many of them, are lifting their heads and saying, what else is out there? And what do they look at? I'm telling you, every time we talk to a NetBackup customer, it's Veeam, Commvault, Rubrik, and Cohesity. We never hear another name. Those four, right? Like clockwork. That's who they look at. And so as a result of that, they're deciding which one of those four they're going to go with. So now, for Veeam, Rubrik, and Commvault, this is a godsend. A base that was locked down that they really couldn't get at is lifted their heads and is looking around. And they're all taking advantage of it. So do I believe Cohesity is going to keep all those NetBackup customers? This is just my opinion. No. Do I think they'll keep a large percentage of them? Yes. But is Veeam, Commvault, and Rubrik going to benefit? Yes.
I think what you said at the beginning with Sanjay at Commvault. I think he did a good job to anticipate this and to pick this doubt on NetBackup user to convert
Yes.
to Commvault.
Sanjay is fantastic. I learned by watching him. There's not many guys like Frank Slootman's another guy I watch. He was also brilliant. Some of these guys are just brilliant, right?
Yeah. Good. Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, any imminent product launches we should be looking out for at all?
Say it again.
Imminent product launches we should be.
Not anymore. I'm not. I made that mistake last year in New York. So no, Cohesity. We're gonna ship Cohesity in a few weeks.
Yeah, but when you pre-announce the All Flash, finally we cover this. And
I know. You're good at this. You really know how to like almost pull me out of my skin. But I'm telling you, I'm getting better.
It's about fashion.
Persistence.
Yeah.
So there isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So just the Cohesity right now. But there's a couple other features in there. So there's one cool feature coming in the release for shipping at the end of the month. So we can, in our product for MSPs and global systems integrators, we could set up a share per customer, right? So you could have, an appliance and, you can set up 10, 20, 30, 40 shares, whatever, 35 shares. Let's call it 30 shares for an appliance, and then you keep adding appliances, and you got hundreds of customers coming into a system. If you set up a customer going into a share today, and I'll talk about what's going to be in the next release, what we do today is we could do a couple things. One is we can track the amount of terabytes coming in as though it was going to primary storage, meaning undeduplicated. Like how much data is coming in, and if it were to land on instead of primary storage, how much data is that so you can bill your customer by the terabyte? If you purge, if you delete, we subtract that out. So what we see coming to share and the math we do and how we track it is identical to what would be on NetApp E-Series Disk or Hitachi or Vintara. So you can bill your customer. We also allow RTL, our retention time lock, by share. So each customer has their own retention time lock. However, at the end of this month, in the version that will ship with Cohesity, we now have quota alerts, because MSPs have been asking for this, which says, let's say that these are 3 different shares, and this particular one is Mary's company, and she's contracted with me to pay me for 100 terabytes of usage a month. And so if we get to the point where more than 100 terabytes net, in other words, what's going in minus what's being deleted purge, what net terabytes is going in gets to 100 terabyte, we alert and say, she's exceeding her quota. We don't stop the data from coming in, but we let them know, and they have a choice. They have to call Mary and say, cut back on your usage, or you got to increase your contract with us. So we've added alerting on a terabyte threshold coming into each share.
With your huge install base, do you see a change in the retention period from users? Do they go down less than 4 weeks, more than 4 weeks, 8 weeks, more than that?
So I saw that already happen. So we went through the Great Recession of 2008. We went through COVID, right? And we went through a year ago, the beginning of the big AI spend, and we saw customers cutting back retention to save money. Absolutely. We haven't seen it going any further. If anything, we're seeing it go the other way now. Because of cyber insurance requirements, because of regulatory and so on, they're starting to expand it again. Because they're walking in trying to keep too low a retention, then they need something from 6 months ago and everybody goes, whoops, we don't have it. So we actually saw it be up higher. It kind of came a little down lower a couple of years ago, and now we're seeing it start to curve up a little bit. I don't know where it lands. Only time will tell.
Good. Any other questions?
Did you learn anything?
Always. Always.